DKT UPSC CSC। अगर आप केवल सिविल सर्विस परीक्षा के प्रीलिम्स, मेंस और इंटरव्यू के वीडियो देखना चाहते हैं तो सब्सक्राइब करें DKT UPSC CSC चैनल। यहाँ आपको टॉपर्स के वीडियो रैंक के हिसाब से अरेंज मिलेंगे। चैनल के लिंक के लिए डिस्क्रिप्शन बॉक्स में जाएं।
Hi everyone, I am Dilip K. Kainikara and I secured All India rank 21 in this year's UPSC Civil Service exams. This was my third attempt and I was actually able to clear prelims comfortably in all of these three attempts. So I would like to provide some pointers on how exactly to do that and some of the tips which actually helped me to achieve good marks in prelims in each of these three attempts. So first of all, what I would like to say is that syllabus is key. Like there is no substitute for that. UPSC provides a very specific and very clear syllabus for prelims and we need to cover that succinctly. Like there are often these schools of thought that there are some tips and tricks, some hacks which will get you over the top. But the thing is, UPSC is often unpredictable. Like for example, if you look at this year's paper, we can see that there were some 6-7 questions which followed a drastically different pattern. And last year there were 3 sports questions which came out of nowhere. So since UPSC often springs such surprises, what I would recommend is do not depend on hacks too much. There are definitely some tips and tricks which can help you to perform well and I will touch upon that later. But prior to that, as a foundation, make sure you are covering your syllabus well. And coming to the syllabus details, we know that there are 2 aspects to it. There are current affairs and there are GS topics, general studies topics. So what I would recommend is for both the GS topics as well as for current affairs topics, proper regular revision is what will distinguish you from the average aspirant. So coming to current affairs preparation, what I used to do is, I used to read one newspaper daily. I used to follow the Hindu and I used to read that regularly. And while that's the foundation of current affairs prep, that alone will not be sufficient. So what I would recommend is keep revising this current affairs regularly. I used to do regular monthly revisions using Vision IAS monthly material and just in the weeks before prelims, I also used to revise using the PT 365 and other yearly current affairs compilations that will be provided by various institutes. So what I would recommend is make sure you are allocating a daily target, a daily amount of time for current affairs and you are properly following the current affairs of the day during that time slot. And another thing is you should learn to read the newspaper selectively. Like not everything in the newspaper is important. Like sports topics can somewhat be neglected. Explicitly political articles can be neglected. So make sure that you are properly familiar with the syllabus first and then develop that skill to identify the articles which are important. As a thumb rule, the editorials and op-ed articles will be more important and articles which are related to the explicit syllabus topics like polity, environment and similar topics will be more important than other articles. So develop that skill of selectively reading the newspaper and regularly revise these topics using monthly compilations and yearly compilations. So that would be the foundation of current affairs prep. And when it comes to GS, make sure that you are making a small and manageable book list. What aspirants often do is that they refer multiple standard books for each GS topics and that takes up a lot of time. Remember that every aspect of preparation is important. You have to cover current affairs, you have to cover the GS topics in adequate depth, you have to make sure that you have covered your optional adequately and revised it in the available time. So given the time constraints, do not go for too much books. Refer the various parts of the syllabus. Identify good standard books for each of those. For example, for history, I used to follow the Spectrum book for modern history and old NCRTs, essentially books by R.S. Sharma and Satish Chandra for ancient and medieval history. So similarly, there are famous standard books that are often followed by the aspirant community. Every topper will be providing his or her book list. Even I have provided my own book list in my Telegram channel. So you can refer to all of those. So based on your interest, based on referring to all these various book lists, make sure that you are following a book list which is manageable, which is covering the entire syllabus and at the same time is not too unwieldy, which is not taking up too much of your time. So those are the fundamentals when it comes to choosing a book list and covering the syllabus. And as I said earlier, just covering the syllabus won't be enough. Make sure you are providing adequate times for revision. Like if I can provide a brief timeline, what I would recommend is try to cover the basic GS topics, the basic standard books at least once before the month of November or the latest by December. And then in the months of December, January and February, try to cover one quick revision of these topics and try to make notes. If you are good at note making, making concise notes will help you a lot in the weeks before prelims or in the weeks before mains. Like revising all the entire standard book might not be very feasible in that point. So having good notes can be very helpful. If you are not that good at note making, following the ready-made notes from various institutes or even following the toppers notes from reputed toppers can also serve as a substitute to that. So as I was saying earlier, try to complete the first round by November and try to use the remaining next 3 months, December, January and February, to do a quick revision, and then the last 90 days before prelims, that is the months of March, April and May. In that period, make sure you are doing very prelims oriented revision. There will be mains only topics like post-independence history and world history, and also the entire optional syllabus, which is not very relevant for prelims. So in the last 90 days before prelims, make sure you are focusing solely and only on subjects that are very specific to prelims. And while we have covered the content part here, content alone won't get you through prelims. Like coming to my own experience, I have written 3 prelims and I have cleared all of those. But even in my third attempt this year, out of the 100 questions, I was only able to get the exact answers to only 40 or even less than 40 questions in my first round. Definitely less than 50 questions. So coming to my own experience, this was my third attempt in which I secured the 21st rank. So in each of my 3 attempts, I had prepared content adequately well before prelims. But regardless of that, out of the 100 questions in paper 1, I was only able to get the correct answer confidently to less than 50 questions. And as we all know, knowing less than 50 questions won't get you over the cutoff. The cutoff will often be around 100 and we need more marks. So what I used to do is, in the first round, I used to mark all those questions which I was really confident about, which as I said earlier used to come to below 50. And then in the second and third rounds, I used to use various elimination tactics and logical reasoning to increase my number of attempts to over 90. In my latest attempt, I actually marked 97 questions. And that's something I would actually recommend. Because if we take the threshold as around 100, if we are only marking 50 questions, we'll have to get all those 50 questions correct to cross the threshold. And we know that that's a bit impractical. But if you are marking 90 questions, we only need to get 60 of those correct. The 60 correct questions will get you 120 marks, and the remaining 30 wrong questions will take that down by 20 marks, but you will still have 100 marks, and that will be over the threshold. So when you are making more attempts, when you are attempting 90 plus questions, you will have an increased margin of error. And so you will have more rooms for using your logical reasoning skills, using your elimination skills to arrive at the answer, even if you do not know the precise answer. And what I would recommend is, you need to spend some time on honing these skills. You can actually join a prelims test series right now, or at least by the time of December, you should join a proper prelims test series and you should follow it kind of religiously. Because regardless of how well your content is, these elimination tactics, time management and similar skills that you need to develop in solving MCQs is what will get you over the threshold. That's what has worked for me, and that's what works for every topper. So make sure you are joining a good test series and you are taking it seriously. What often happens is that especially when the test series is online, aspirants do not take it seriously enough. They just go through it casually, they attempt the questions, but they do not care about time management, they do not care about the rounds based approach, and that often backfires at the end. So what I would recommend is, from your very first prelims test series, make sure you are taking it seriously. Make sure you are doing it in the exact same way that you would do it in the actual prelims exam. And when it comes to my prelims attempts, there were some things which I used to follow rather strictly. One is following a rounds based approach. Rather than haphazardly spending a lot of time on every question chronologically, in my first round I used to seek out the easy questions and attempt them, and then in the later rounds I used to come to the more difficult questions, and based on the time left, I was able to allot time to them more scientifically. And time management is very key to our prelims preparation. We know that we only have 2 hours to do 100 questions, so we have around slightly over a minute for each question. So in our first round, if we use our time properly, we will be able to save some time, and that time can actually be spent on the more difficult questions later. So make sure you are wearing a watch, make sure you are using it properly, and make sure you are following a rounds based approach when it comes to attempting the paper. And these things won't come naturally to you, so practice this when you are doing the prelims mock test, so that when it comes to the actual exam, this comes as a nature of habit to you. You won't even have to think about it. Once you get the paper, you will naturally be doing a first round of easy questions, and then you will be moving on to more difficult questions. You will be checking the time regularly. You will automatically be calculating the amount of time left, and so the amount of time that's available for each question. This will all come properly to you if you are practicing it properly, even during the time of your mock test. So finally, let me come to some pointers which have helped me a lot in gaining a few extra marks in prelims. One is doing a proper PYQ analysis. Like before studying any subject, what I would recommend is, take a look at the prelims PYQs of that topic, so that you will be able to identify the areas where UPSC puts more priority on. For example, when it comes to ancient and medieval history, we can see that there is a lot of focus on chronology, and there is also a lot of focus on terminology. Like UPSC often takes these rather obscure terms from ancient and medieval history and asks us what it means. And they also take various kings and various historical events, and they often ask us to arrange that in chronological order. So once we are familiar with this pattern of questions, we will be able to adapt our preparation to that accordingly. And to quote another example, when we look at the map based questions, we can see that they are often strongly linked to international affairs. Like for example, this year Afghanistan was in news a lot, and in this year's prelims there was actually a question which focuses on that, which asked us to identify the countries which are neighboring Afghanistan and something similar to that. And even in Africa, South Sudan and the civil war which is happening in South Sudan was in the news a lot, and there was a map question which was related to that. So whenever you are studying an international affairs topic, if you are aware of these PYQ trends, you will be able to adapt your preparation to that accordingly. You will be able to locate these regions in map, you will try to commit that to memory, and such tips and tricks will help you gain a few extra marks in prelims.
Ethics with S. Ansari remains the best ever choice. Do you know that ethics paper is the only paper in general studies that pays more with less efforts? One can easily secure 130 to 140 marks. Lukman IAS is a well-established name since 2014 for ethics paper. We offer 3 types of courses: Ethics Foundation course, Ethics Case Studies, and Ethics Test Series. Since 2015, Lukman IAS students have maintained the records of securing the highest marks in this paper. So, why to wait? Contact us today for more information.
And thirdly and most importantly, it's the last few months before prelims that will essentially determine your success or failure in prelims. So in those 90 days, make sure you have a proper plan. Have a 90-day plan which incorporates both current affairs as well as static subjects. For current affairs, you can either use your own notes, or you can depend on these various compilations, the monthly compilations, or even the yearly compilations like PT 365, which will be published in the months before prelims. So you can use that to do a thorough revision of current affairs, and also make sure that you are allocating adequate time for static revision too, because this is something which often gets neglected in that period. Because regardless of how good your static knowledge is, regardless of whether you have studied Spectrum or Lakshmikan thoroughly in the earlier months, you have to revise those in the last 3 months to make sure that they are fresh in your memory, that you can easily recollect that in the prelims exam. So have a 90 days plan which includes all the 3 components. It includes a thorough current affairs revision, it includes a proper revision of the GS standard books or notes that you have prepared from them, and thirdly, it includes a lot of mock test and MCQ practice. As I have mentioned multiple times earlier, there is no substitute for practice. Regardless of how good your content is, making sure that you are well versed in MCQs, that even in questions you do not know properly, you can use your partial knowledge and your logical elimination skills to eliminate 2 or even 3 options and to arrive at the answer. That's a skill you have to cultivate on your own, and you have to specifically focus on that in these last 90 days. If you have properly framed a 90 days plan in the 3 months before prelims and executed it properly, if you have done enough mock tests to ensure that you can scientifically manage your time during prelims and you can reach 90 attempts and you can maintain a decent accuracy. It doesn't have to be an extreme accuracy. If you can maintain a decent accuracy, if you can get 60 out of those 90 questions correct, that's enough. So that's essentially the crux of my prelims strategy. I used to make a 90 days plan which incorporates current affairs, static topics as well as mock tests, and I used to follow it diligently. And I used to take the mock tests in a very serious manner and use those to improve my logical reasoning as well as my time management skills. And in the actual exam, I used to ensure that I always attempted above 90 questions, and I did that in a scientific manner using a multi-round approach. So these are not really complicated things. These are things all of you can definitely incorporate into your practice, and if you are able to do that, I am sure you will see improvement in your prelims marks. Best wishes for all of you. Thanks.